What is good, guys? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm also going to break down what's happening with the overall situation involving Israel and Iran, why we're seeing more and more things coming out that are causing the market to dip. I'm also going to talk about what's happening with the economic calendar as we have Jerome Powell giving a speech for tomorrow, and what you should be watching for on the charts for Tesla and beyond. But before I begin the devil's information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I'm firstly not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Weeble link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Weeble and deposit $500, you're guaranteed 20 free stocks. If you deposit $25,000 more, you're guaranteed 75 of them. And the offer ends very soon in just 2 weeks. Anyways, for Tesla, I just want to call out that the daily chart is bearish on Tesla. We had this high up here, we came down, made a lower high, came down, continuing to make lower highs and lower lows consistently. We also have this triple bottom like structure that's developing right here, so Tesla has to bounce off this support. If we fail to bounce off 160, there's going to be a bigger drop coming, and we're going to be testing this support right here. So basically, it's very simple. So as you guys can see, there's this tiny little dotted blue line here. That's where Tesla's share price currently is, by the way. So if we lose that support, we're going to be coming all the way down here. We could be dropping all the way down to the 150 area, 155, then 152, and then if that fails us, if we fail to hold 152, there's a big gap to fill at 144. So Tesla could come down quite a bit if we lose this support. That's going to be the first big red flag for Tesla. So it has to try to bounce here, or else it's going to continue to sink. I want to make that very clear from a technical standpoint. So the question is, what's affecting Tesla? Why is Tesla bearish? Why is the market dropping the way it is? I'm going to break down more details about this first before I break down these charts. What on earth is going on? In my video from yesterday, I said that if the market saw some decent news that Israel and Iran are kind of like easing the situation, we could get a bounce in the markets. If, however, Israel or Iran continue to escalate the situation, we could see more downside. I made that very clear in my video from yesterday. At the time I recorded my video yesterday, my main video yesterday, what happened was the situation was easing. We were seeing lots of decent news. So I was hoping that we would get some kind of bounce thanks to that. But I told you that in case something happens, be prepared for also the opposite direction. And what happened was this news came out. So as a reminder, this whole conflict goes back thousands of years. Not going to say who started what. It's just endless and pointless to just point fingers. So what happened was Iran had a retaliation attack against Israel after they lost some of their commanders after Israel struck part of Syria. So after that happened, Iran over the weekend sent over 300 ballistic and cruise missiles at Israel, and 99% of which were intercepted by Israel's defense system. That was very expensive as well, but it still worked out very well for them. So we were hoping things would just cool off from here. Russia, China, these other countries are telling Iran to calm down. The US is telling Israel to calm down as well, restrain themselves. Instead, Israel's war cabinet and their military chief are saying that they want to respond to Israel's attack, and they're very, very insistent they're going to respond. They're going to fight back. They're angry that this is happening. So one side hit the other side's hitting the other. They're just quote unquote defending each other. It's just going back and forth and back and forth. Israel's now saying they want to defend themselves after that. Iran wants to defend themselves before. It's just madness, guys. Okay, it's just absolute madness. Innocent lives are going to be lost. It's just horrendous to hear anything about this. But the bottom line is this, okay? We're not picking sides. We all want peace. We all could agree on that. Here's what I want to say. This is not cooling off. This is not easing. This is becoming more intense. This is becoming scarier by the minutes. Okay? It's going to have a big effect on crude oil. It's going to have a big effect on the Fed. That's very important. Because this is not cooling off and because Israel is threatening to now attack Iran, that is bad news. The market is responding to this. And this news just came out. As soon as this news came out, the market started tanking. The market was trying to rebound a bit in the morning, then just started tanking once that news came out a couple of hours into the market open. So that's why the market is responding like this. Okay. It's very, very sad to hear about that, but it is what it is. The situation is not easing, it's continuing to escalate, and that's the reason why the market's responding that way. So, what else is going to affect the market? To some extent, we could see some volatility at 9:15 a.m. Before the market opens. We have some industrial and manufacturing production numbers. And then at 11:30 a.m., we have the 42-day bill auction, the 52-week bill auction coming out. That's in Eastern Standard Time. And besides that, we're going to be watching to see what else happens. So watch for some volatility at those times. Not to mention, At 1:15 p.m., we have the one and only Jerome Powell, the legend Jerome Powell, giving a speech. He's going to be at a discussion with the governor of the Bank of Canada. And whatever Jerome Powell says in Washington, D.C. is going to be very, very important. We're going to be talking a lot about economics and what's happening with the economy. Jerome Powell's also going to likely respond to this other speech by another one of the vice chairs. They're going to be talking about the monetary policy during periods of uncertainty. So they might be responding and maybe giving us some comments about the whole Israel and Iran situation. This is going to be big for the markets, so expect some high volatility at 1:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow when Jerome Powell starts his speech. Besides that, for earnings, tomorrow we have Bank of America, we have Morgan Stanley, then we also have United. I'm not going to talk too much about these. I kind of like went over the ones for the morning. So for Goldman Sachs, they did relatively well. They actually saw a nice bounce, beating on guidance, beating on EPS, and etc. Charles Schwab had very, very mixed earnings, but they ended up missing on some of their projections when it comes to bank deposits, and their overall guidance wasn't that great. So this one was mixed, but this one was good. As far as crude goes, it's gone up just a little bit. It's still kind of at this level, but it may continue to go up higher if the conflicts between Israel and Iran continue. So be careful about this. This could be very, very impactful for inflation in the U.S. So that's very important. As far as Tesla goes, I went over this news earlier. Tesla's going to lay off more than 10% of its global workforce. That's over 14,000 employees. This came out from an email by Elon Musk, which he sent throughout the company. That's very, very important. So, as of December 2023, they had over 140,000. When he said that they're going to lay off more than 10% of their workforce, that implies over 14,000 employees are going to be laid off at Tesla. Not the best of news for Tesla investors because it's just showing the fact that Tesla has to do what they can to reduce costs, and there are a lot of hardships coming. On top of all of this, Tesla is also heavily impacted by global events such as geopolitical issues and any wars that are going on. Wells Fargo has maintained that Tesla is going to have an underweight rating. Citigroup gave Tesla a neutral rating, and Jefferies is saying to hold on to your shares. The price-price ratio is dipping a bit as Tesla is not showing the most of strength. And historically, Mondays tend to be green 53% of the time. Tuesdays are green about 51% of the time, but this doesn't matter as much as we have external factors affecting them. Look for volatility at 10 a.m., 11 a.m., and then also at around the second to last hour of the day. These tend to be the most volatile hours for Tesla. And historically, April and May are not the strongest of months, but June tends to be a much better month. So we'll see how things go for Tesla from here. The market was due for a pullback. We're finally starting to get that, and that's going to affect Tesla. Tesla had 99 million in volume and dropped on a little bit higher than average volume, despite the fact that short volume is dropping just a little bit. So the question is, what's going to happen to the markets? What is my prediction? What do I think is going to break down on these charts? Well, we have Jerome Powell giving a speech. That could be unpredictable, but what I can tell you is that Tesla's at critical support right now. So I showed you guys the daily chart earlier. I showed you guys that we have to hold 160. If Tesla loses this, there's going to be a big risk of it coming all the way down to like 152. Watch resistance at 162.5, 165, and then 168. Watch support at 155, and then 152. My gut is telling me we're going to see Tesla kind of rebound a bit, grab liquidity in the very, very low 160s, and it's going to later on, either tomorrow or as the time goes on, as the conflict between Israel and Iran continues, okay, as if this does not ease up, there's going to be a risk of Tesla losing 160, which is going to be a big, red flag. That could lead Tesla just sinking all the way down to 152. So look for this to potentially gap up, pop a bit, and then eventually start sinking down. And I think that there's going to be a risk of 152. For SPY, I just want to make it very clear that SPY has something else very interesting on its daily. Let me just pull up the daily charts for a bunch of different tickers just to show you guys the much easier picture. It's very simple. So SPY, if you look at the chart, look at the daily, it looks pretty weak. We have this giant gap at 497 to fill. There's also support at 500. If we lose this gap support at 503, it's going to easily come down to about 500 and then 497 below that. I think those are going to be some targets for the next week or so. It could happen over the next couple of days because of this whole conflict in the entire situation. When it comes to the QQQ, there's also a big gap to fill at 425. There's a risk of that potentially coming. Watch for that over the next few weeks. And then on Nvda, there's also this gap over here at 825. It's going to likely come down to fill that. So those are some gaps worth noting on the daily timeframes. Just wanted to call those out real quick before I break down everything else. So just know all these stocks have big gaps below, and they're going to likely get filled. And just to show you Tesla's one more time, let me just show you Tesla's before I break down these other charts. Tesla has that big gap to fill at 146 technically, or 144, somewhere around there. we might fill that gap, but in order for that to happen, we have to first lose 160. We might pop a bit tomorrow and then end up losing it either tomorrow or later on. If that ends up being the case, there's going to be a risk of it coming down to 152 all over again. And if you look at Tesla's chart, the daily is looking bearish, so there is definitely a risk of that. Just want to make that as clear as possible. Anyways, the daily on SPY is looking a bit more bearish. We're going to transition to the hourly time frame just to break down more scalp levels and like much tighter levels because I think that it's important to go over these. So I think what could happen tomorrow is we're going to try to attempt to gap up a little bit. We could try to test, 507 around that area all over again, and then we may continue lower and start sinking all the way down towards 500, if not 497. I see a risk of us dropping lower. Look for a little rebound, consolidation, and a move even lower, and we could see this continue to fall closer to 500. I think SPY is going to eventually come down to 497 over the next week or so. So be on the lookout for that. Might rebound a bit first and eventually make our way down much lower. On the QQQ, I'm seeing the same thing. The QQQ has resistance at 432. We also have 434 above that. We have support at 429, 427, and then 425, which is where the gap fill is. I think it's going to pop a little bit, retest 434 to 432, this range right here, consolidate, then eventually make our way all the way down to 425. That's my next target on the QQQ. I think it may come over the next couple of days. Be careful, guys. The charts are looking more risky, in my personal opinion. Tesla, once again, I told you guys about the resistance levels. It could come back down to this range. 162 to 165 could retest this temporarily, then come back down. And then if we lose 160, look for this thing to come all the way down to at least 155, if not 152. There's going to be a risk of downside on Tesla, especially because of what's happening all over the world. For Nvidia, we have resistance at 862 and then 872. If we lose this support, we could easily come down to 830, 844, then 834, and then eventually fall all the way down to about the 825 area. Look for a pop all the way up to this 877 area, and then we could start sinking all the way down to about 834. So watch for that very, very carefully. That's going to be very, very key for the way we end up moving. For Apple stock, we're looking bearish right now. We're going to be looking for a test of 173.5. If we lose this or reject off this, we're going to be coming all the way down to 171, if not 170. So I see a risk of us falling even more. Could pop a bit and then start to continue to fall to fill this gap. I see some more downside potential in Apple. So, anyways, that's it for the main five I typically go over. Right now, the market's in a very, very critical state because of what's happening all over the world. I'm going to now just focus on a couple more tickers out there, which are very important before I conclude this video. So, for Palantir, this chart looks a little bit more bearish to me as this thing has been falling quite a bit. We're on the 4-hour time frame, there's a little bit of weakness. It really depends on if we could hold this support at 21.7. Last time we hit this, we bounced. So are we going to rebound a bit and then sink? Or if we lose it, I could see it falling all the way down to 21. So I'm seeing some more bearish potential in this. So please be very careful as we're looking weaker. Supermicro on the 4-hour time frame is at support at the 200 EMA. That's at 879. If we lose this, we're going to come all the way down to about 855. If we bounce off this, look for 895. My gut tells me it may pop a bit and start dropping, or it could just drop from here. We're at 879 as support, so I see a risk of this dropping all the way down to about 8, all the way down to the 850s. So watch for that. I do think there's a risk of that on Supermicro, but watch and see how it holds 879 first. For Rivian, in my opinion, is continuing to fall. Look for a test of 8.71. If we hit that and reject, we're going to be coming all the way down to 8 flat. Or if we fall here, we could just start sinking. So watch for that very carefully. For SoFi, we're looking a bit more bearish. We have a head and shoulders like structure. Look for a retest of 7.2, then eventually a drop all the way down to 7. Or we could just drop to 7 from here as we have this symmetrical structure kind of developing. So I see a risk of downside on SoFi. For the IWM Russell 2000, we're on a bit of a downtrend right here. We're continuing to fall. Look for a test of about 197. If that fails us, we could be sinking all the way down towards 192, excuse me, right over here where this support happens to be, then 190 below that. So I'm seeing some risks of downside on the Russell 2000 as well. Could pop first and then eventually start dipping. For AMD, we're on a downtrend right now, but it's not falling as hard as other stocks out there. Going to be looking for a test of 160. If we lose 160, we'll look for 158, then 155, then eventually 150. Those are 3 levels. I see this thing potentially testing 162 and it might reject, and I see a risk of it dropping lower as we're on a downtrend. And I can see it coming all the way down to about 158. For ARM, we're looking a little bit more bearish. Could retest 124, then reject and start sinking towards 119. I see a test of 119.72 coming, so look and see if this continues to sink. I find that to be very, very probable. For Coinbase, we're currently at around 220. We could pop a bit and then continue sinking. If we lose 220, look for a move all the way down towards 216. If that fails us, 210 is coming, followed by our next target will be 200 below that. So I see a little pop first and eventually 220 coming. That's the 200 EMA. If we lose that, we're going to be sinking all the way down towards 210. Watch for that previous resistance becoming support. On Amazon, we're looking a little bit risky on Amazon because this thing loved to hover above the 50 EMA, the yellow line right here. We're starting to lose this. So if it loses this, we're going to be looking for a move all the way down to 181, if not 180. So look for some more potential downside on the chart. It's looking a bit more bearish. Meta is looking a little bit weaker, could retest 500 and continue to sink. If we fail to hold 497, look for a move all the way down to this imbalance at 490. So I think 490 is a strong possibility. Watch for that very carefully. Microsoft's looking a bit more bearish, could retest about 415, then start sinking all the way down towards this 409 area. So I see a risk of some downside. Google's looking a bit more bearish. Look for 155 to be tested. Could retest 156, then start sinking all the way down to about 153. That's going to be very, very key. The VIX is trying to break out, trying to push a lot higher. So I'm going to be watching to see how that ends up looking. As of right now, it's on a very, very nice break. It's well above its 50 daily moving average. And this could continue to push even higher from here. So if this continues to break out, I'm going to be looking for a test of 20 to be coming very, very soon. It's getting very close to that 20 resistance. So I could see it pushing a little higher because the market has more risks of downside. And then finally, for the dollar has resistance at 106. It could come down to retest 105.8 and then bounce or make a move from there. So that's what I'm going to be watching for. So as far as Tesla goes, I want to make this very clear, guys. Tesla is in a very, very critical place. It has to try to bounce and hold above 160. If we lose this, there's going to be a risk of much more downside. So please be mindful of that. It could rebound a bit first. I do think it's going to try to do so a little bit, maybe gap up and then pop a bit. And I think that the overall momentum is so bearish to the point where I think that Tesla's going to get dragged down. I think that there's going to be a risk of Tesla dropping even more. So unfortunately, this is not what any of us wanted. None of us wanted to hear about this whole, war conflict to escalate. I was hoping that this would cool off, as reports were kind of showing that yesterday with everything that was going on. But instead, that ended up just changing this morning. So that's the crazy thing about this market. There's a lot of news affecting it in this current phase, and the news that's affecting it is very important. It's very, very bearish right now, and the market's getting a very negative response. So make sure you're prepared for this and make sure you watch all your levels. For tomorrow, we could see a little rebound attempt on Tesla, then a continuation down lower. So make sure you're prepared for that. Make sure you're ready and do what's necessary for your own portfolios. Thank you for listening. I know that things are tough during times like this with wars going on, not to mention Tesla laying off employees. But I'm still a big believer in Tesla. I think the long term of this company is very bright. And I really, honestly, just can't wait to see what the future holds. I'm a big Tesla bull, so give the stock the time it needs. I think the big opportunity to buy up those shares is coming, as Tesla may have more downside potential. Not financial advice, by the way. All right, so thank you for listening. Have a great day. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning during my typical morning update videos, and I'll see you guys very soon in the next one again. Thank you for listening, and peace out.